our neighborhood. Get the out of our neighborhood. Can I go check a pulse?
No! Back up! Now!
I'm a physician!
I don't
listen,
care.
we understand. We got EMS coming, and I get it. Just give us a second.
We have medics on scene. We have our own medics.
Where are they? Where are they? How can I relax? You just killed my neighbor. You caught butter in the face. You killed my neighbor. How do you show up to work every day? How the do you do this every day? You're killing my neighbors. You're stealing my neighbors. What the man?
Can I go check a pulse?
No! Back up! Now!
I'm a physician!
I don't
listen,
care.
we understand. We got EMS coming, and I get it. Just give us a second.
We have medics on scene. We have our own medics.
Where are they? Where are they? How can I relax? You just killed my neighbor. You caught butter in the face. You killed my neighbor. How do you show up to work every day? How the do you do this every day? You're killing my neighbors. You're stealing my neighbors. What the man?
And as I came up here, I noticed that the ambulances were around, and then I saw behind the snowbank that they're doing CPR on a woman right behind here.
I can't share all the information that I know, but what I do know is that the ICE agent that shot somebody should be arrested effective immediately.
There was a red SUV parked right in front of our house. Two people in camouflage, ICE agents, presumably one on the driver's side, one on the passenger side of the vehicle. A third person in also camouflage fatigues came and started pulling on the driver's side door handle, at which point the vehicle backed up a few feet and started driving forward. The agent who was on the driver's side originally, who was not pulling on the handle but had been there prior to that, shot 2 or 3 times through the driver's side window. The car drove a 30-40 feet and crashed into another car in the telephone pole.
Anger and indignation that this could happen. Like, it was, in my opinion, completely uncalled for. The car was backing up and pulling forward, moving out of like the lane of like blocking traffic, and then shots were fired. For what reason, I can't say. But it does not seem to me any kind of justifiable use of deadly force. Like, a person was killed for basically nothing outside of my house. I've lived here for 2 years. I've never seen anything like this.
I didn't witness, but I talked to several people that witnessed it, and they heard the gunshot. And the one guy said that they reached for her door handle, and then she took off, and then he shot her through the windshield and shot her in the face.
A 37-year-old woman was shot and killed by an ICE agent in Minneapolis on Wednesday. Here's how it unfolded. CNN reviewed video of 3 angles of the shooting. The woman first can be seen in her car waving her hand out the window as 2 federal officers in a truck pull up. They then begin to approach the woman on the driver's side, telling her to get out of the car. At the same time this interaction is unfolding, a third officer, who would soon shoot the driver, can be seen walking from the opposite side of the vehicle. That officer draws his pistol as the car first reverses and then begins to move forward. He then fires multiple shots. Another angle seems to show the car making contact with the officer before he fired his gun. The car then accelerates and crashes into a nearby parked car. After the shooting, neighbors asked to administer aid, shouting at the federal agents.
We have our own medics.
Where are they? Where
This morning we learned that an ICE officer shot and killed someone in Minneapolis. My deepest condolences to the family, to the loved ones who had to learn about this tragic event on national television. We have been warning for weeks that the Trump administration's dangerous, sensationalized operations are a threat to our public safety, that someone was going to get hurt. Just yesterday, I said exactly that. What we're seeing is the consequences of governance designed to generate fear, headlines, and conflict. It's governing by reality TV, and today that recklessness cost someone their life. I've reached out to Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, and I'm waiting to hear back. Let me be clear, Donald Trump and his administration may not care much about Minnesota. That's been pretty evident, but we love this state. We won't let them tear us apart. We'll not turn against each other. To Minnesotans, I say this: I feel your anger. I'm angry. They want a show. We can't give it to them. We cannot. If you protest and express your First Amendment rights, please do so peacefully, as you always do. We can't give them what they want. The hearts and minds of the people in this state are on our side. To Americans, I ask you this: please stand with Minneapolis. To Minnesotans, know that our administration is going to stop at nothing to seek accountability and justice. The State Bureau of Criminal Apprehension are working on the investigation. We have activated the State Emergency Operations Center. State Patrol and Minnesota National Guard leadership is connected with the Minneapolis Police Department, the St. Paul Police Department, Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, the DNR, and Minnesota's Homeland Security and Emergency Management. We have activated dozens of members of the State Patrol's mobile response team. And from here on, I have a very simple message. We do not need any further help from the federal government. To Donald Trump and Kristi Noem, you've done enough. There's nothing more important than Minnesotan safety. I've issued a warning order to prepare the Minnesota National Guard. We have soldiers in training and prepared to be deployed if necessary. I remind you, a warning order is a heads up for folks. And these National Guard troops are our National Guard troops. They're teachers in your community. They're business owners. They're construction professionals. They are Minnesotans. Minnesota will not allow our community to be used as a prop in a national political fight. We will not take the bait. We will continue to update you, Minnesota, as we get more information.
You asked about a shooting that we just had in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It was an act of domestic terrorism. What happened was our ICE officers were out in an enforcement action. They got stuck in the snow because of the adverse weather that is in Minneapolis. They were attempting to push out their vehicle, and a woman attacked them and those surrounding them and attempted to run them over and ram them with her vehicle. An officer of ours acted quickly and defensively shot to protect himself and the people around him. And my understanding is that she was hit and is deceased. We're continuing to gather more information, but this goes to show the assaults that our ICE officers and our law enforcement are under every single day. These vehicle rammings are domestic acts of terrorism. We're working with the Department of Justice to prosecute them as such. We will continue to protect our ICE officers and in cooperation with other law enforcement agencies as well.
I saw the disturbing video. Obviously, it's a serious situation. There's going to be a full investigation, as we all know and expect. Look, it appears to us, I guess, anybody who sees the video from certain angles, that the driver of the vehicle weaponized that vehicle against law enforcement officers and against bystanders. It was a dangerous situation. People make snap judgments in those situations, and it's a really sad outcome. Look, I do think that it's right. I think, I guess maybe it was Homeland or someone put out a statement that this clearly appears to be the result of this just months-long rhetoric against law enforcement and people encouraging that kind of violence. And so we call upon all the citizens of Minneapolis to be calm. We don't want anyone to be hurt. We need law enforcement to be able to do their jobs, and it's a terrible situation. But we await. So
you don't think there's any chance the officer did anything wrong? You don't think the officer did anything wrong?
I don't know. I wasn't there, and neither were you. And it's wrong for people to jump to these conclusions without a full investigation. You have to find out the facts on the ground, and I think that will happen.
Have you watched the video yourself? Should ICE get out? Should ICE leave Minneapolis?
There's a lot of information that is swirling around right now, and we collectively are going to do everything possible to get to the bottom of this, to get justice, and to make sure that there is an investigation that is conducted in full. But what we do know is that a 37-year-old woman is dead and that she was shot by ICE. We've dreaded this moment since the early stages of this ICE presence in Minneapolis. Not only is this a concern that we've had internally, we've been talking about it. They are not here to cause safety in this city. What they are doing is not to provide safety in America. What they are doing is causing chaos and distrust. They're ripping families apart. They're sowing chaos on our streets, and in this case, quite literally killing people. They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is we are better than a bunch of ICE agents being deployed to cities around the country and ripping apart families and communities. We're better than that. And so we are going to meet that hate with love. We are going to meet that despair with hope. We are going to meet that injustice with constitutional justice ourselves. And we're going to make sure that in this very difficult moment, we do not take the bait that these ICE agents are trying to create and that the federal government, to be clear, wants.
And let me remind you why we're all here in this city today and why we've been here. In communities across this country and here in Minneapolis, we're just enforcing the laws that we have in this country. For years under President Biden, tens of millions of dangerous criminal illegal aliens, terrorists, and suspected terrorists were allowed to invade our country over our southern border. They were allowed to steal, to defraud, and to perpetuate violence against American citizens. Regardless of who your mayor or who your governor is, President Trump promised every single American that he would make America safe again. He promised every single American that he would work to protect them from dangerous criminals. Since Governor Walz has been in charge of Minnesota, we have seen homicides go up by over 50%. That's also during Mayor Frye's tenure as well. Since President Trump took office, Governor Walz has released over 470 violent criminals back onto the streets here in Minneapolis. He has another 680 of them still within his jurisdiction that he could give to us today to face the consequences for their crimes. Because Governor Walz and Mayor Frye refuse to protect Minnesotans, and instead they protect these criminals, that's why we are here. And we didn't just show up yesterday, we've always been here.
A lot of pain and anger in this community, not too far removed from this ICE shooting. This is the vigil that's been growing over the course of Wednesday and beyond here in Minneapolis to remember Renee Good, 37 years old, shot and killed in this incident here, where you see the flowers, you see the candles, you see the signs as well. Now, this is the neighborhood and community where everything really unfolded. There are multiple videos, really, of what happened. One of the first videos that started to circulate was from the ground level, where you see her SUV backing up. You see sort of the ICE officers surrounding the vehicle. One tries to pull on the driver's side door. And then when those wheels start turning to the right, there's an officer that appears to be in front of that vehicle. That is when the shooting starts, and that officer moves to the side of the vehicle, and the shooting then continues. There's another video as well that comes from a much higher angle that shows that there was actually contact made with the officer as that vehicle was sort of turning to the right and as those gunshots began. But they were gunshots that we know then killed Renee Good as that car then careened into what became its final resting place here at this vigil. Now, as you can imagine, a lot of pain in the community, as I've talked about, has emanated from this event in particular, and a lot of questions over what comes next. The Department of Homeland Security was very quickly to come out and claim that this was domestic terrorism, that the officer feared for their life. Well, the mayor of Minneapolis and the governor here in Minnesota pushed back on that significantly, saying that was not the case and that they plan to move forward and do everything in their power to make sure that this is investigated properly. But bottom line is, moving forward, there are many in this community who did not want ICE here to begin with. They are now even more angered that an incident like this ended the way that it did. Omar Jimenez, CNN, Minneapolis.
I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here.
That is the mayor of Minneapolis echoing the anger of Minnesotans after the fatal shooting of a 37-year-old woman by an ICE officer. ICE out now! ICE out now! The killing drew hundreds of protesters last night in Minneapolis. At least 5 people have now been killed nationwide since the Trump administration's immigration crackdown began.
To Donald Trump and Kristi Noem, you've done enough. There's nothing more important than Minnesotan safety. I've issued a warning order to prepare the Minnesota National Guard. We have soldiers in training and prepared to be deployed if necessary. I remind you, a warning order is a heads up for folks. And these National Guard troops are our National Guard troops.
Governor Walz has not clarified what he will instruct the National Guard to do if ICE resumes its enforcement activities in his state. Joining me now in the group chat, Betsy Klein, CNN senior White House reporter, Mike Dubke, former Trump White House communications director, and Megan Hayes, former Biden White House director of message planning. I'm glad you guys are all here because, like any image of law enforcement death, brutality, involved shooting, we're hearing different narratives. This is what the president said on Truth Social. He described the person who was killed. The woman screaming was obviously, he called her a professional agitator. The woman driving the car was very disorderly, obstructing and resisting, then violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer who seems to have shot her in self-defense. I am seeing this language echoed everywhere but the White House, that somehow everyone who protests is a professional. And that they are creating the problems that might be leading to their own, in this case, demise.
Right, and in these sort of sensitive moments, people look to their leadership for that message. They want their leaders to take down the temperature. President Trump is not doing that. He immediately politicized this. He called her radical left, a professional agitator, as you saw. But he is also standing squarely behind ICE, behind Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem. And the why they are there, they are enacting President Trump's mass deportation agenda. So there's some hope that the president's going to tone down his rhetoric, even inside the White House. He has no public events on his schedule today. We'll have to see if that holds.
It's interesting because we heard that clip from Governor Walz, from the mayor. Very blunt at this point. Does it help or hurt, Megan?
I don't think it hurts. I think that they need to take control of their city, and what happened here was murder. They are not trained to shoot at a moving vehicle. That is not in their training. But also, let's remember the context of why they are there. From a right-wing blogger who posted something about Somalian fraud, which the state of Minnesota was already on and already knew about. And so that is what this surge is about. So I don't want to lose context of why that they are there. But also, I also want to point out, the Obama administration also had deportations and also deported more people than Trump is. And there weren't these protests, there weren't these raids. They did it in a humane way. They gave people due process. So there is a way to enforce immigration policy here. That is not what the Trump administration is doing, which is constantly turning up the rhetoric and creating more chaos.
Mike, can I get your response?
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with Megan on this in terms of turning up the rhetoric and turning up the response. I think we've got a culture right now of speak first, think second, and part of that is from the president, but also from the mayor. The only voice of reason I heard, and I am not a fan of Governor Walz at all. I think there was fraud in Minnesota. Yeah, the reason why they were there is really governor's lack of oversight on the federal programs, and we can talk about that later. But they all turned up the rhetoric. And right now, to Betsy's point, we really need to turn it down.